in Cinema Season 2, and this is a very interesting video. There's going to be two of these, in fact. Years ago, I decided I wanted to do a series on my channel called Hayao Miyazaki Month, where I was going to dedicate a month of videos to the films and works of all of his films, his 11 feature films. Then I was going to do videos on the Blu-ray releases of his movies and review the special features and stuff. I was going to talk about some of his kind of things that he'd written and things like that, which is going to be actually the topic of this video that you're about to watch, that I filmed about 5 years ago. But also, you know, just I think the short films as well. There's the music video, On Your Mark. So I was going to like really dive deep on Miyazaki's stuff. Be one of those extra videos, which was me reviewing the like 1,000+ page manga of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which he made from about 5 years ago when I first read that manga, and my initial reaction and review of the Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind manga. So it's a video that's just been sat on my hard drives for, you know, half a decade, and it's about time it was in the vault and kind of give it to you. I don't think the Hayao Miyazaki month is ever going to happen again, so I need to start releasing these things, I think. So with that in mind, this is the Nausicaa review, and there'll be one more Hayao Miyazaki month kind of not even deleted video, but just unused video that I'll be posting, so you can look out for that one as well. It'll be a review of two movies with myself and my brother from 5 years ago. Anyway, on with this one, which is my Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind manga thoughts and review. Enjoy. Hello, welcome back to Hayao Miyazaki Month, and this one will be a book with the title. It is Miyazaki's magnum opus. A complete edition, the deluxe hardback edition that collects the entire story. Just a really nice box set. And inside you have two volumes, Volume 1, Volume 2, and inside both over, I think, 12 years, from 1982, this from before the film Nausicaa was made. He took a break, came back to it, took another break to go off and do Castle in the Sky service, came back to it, took another break to do Porco Rosso, and then he came back to it and finished it in 1994. In fact, I can give you an exact date, because the final panel of this story is dated by Miyazaki himself. So the box set itself, before we even get to me talking about the story and reviewing it and everything like that, if you get this edition, where is it? You get this nice little fold-out poster, which maybe you could frame if you wanted. Two watercolor images that Miyazaki put together. There's now in this video too, where this is discussed. But yeah, nice little poster. And also it is kind of presented as faithfully as possible with the Japanese way of reading from right to left, not left to right. So not only when you take the books out, as you'll see, not only do you open it in the way that feels unnatural, which is this way, and it starts at the back, kind of, and then ends at the front, you know, from the way that us in the Western world read books. But also the paneling, the panels, you read from right to left too. So it gets it's kind of hard to get used to. So you have to kind of go from this side to this side, which just feels very unnatural, and quite a few times I did get lost in the story. But yeah, so here's the first volume. Really nice artwork there. In fact, I'll jump ahead straight to it. This is going to be a bit of a jumble of a video, but later on, now I've read that book, I know what Miyazaki thinks of this particular image. He doesn't like it. He said that sometimes when he would do the watercolor images for the covers of the magazine that this story was posted in every month for however long it was, sometimes they'd say, we want a Nausicaa image for the cover of the magazine this month to go along with, you know, the 8 or 16 pages that you're going to be providing inside the magazine. So he put together some of these images and he didn't like some of them. And this one in particular, he said that the watercolors wouldn't translate very well when they were kind of printed. And he said this one, which in the set, and it's an image that Miyazaki is not very fond of, but I think it's great. I think it's awesome. And you got some really nice artwork there that kind of, this is all around the box set as well. that kind of almost like tapestry kind of imagery that kind of relates to the story. See the Omu there, and the kind of spores from the whatever you would call it, the sea of corruption, the sea of decay, the toxic jungle. There's so many ways of putting it, from the many different things too there. And that is a very iconic, well not iconic, but it's a very important symbol and image in the story. This right here, the white bird, the apostle. But these are both over 500 pages long, so it's well over 1,000 pages of story. In the back of the onomatopoeia, which, you know, might in an English comic might be like, you know, crash, that they evoke a sound. The onomatopoeia in the Nausicaa here, if you can see it, there's like there's some Japanese writing in the wind there, and it's in Japanese, and so you'd assume it's kind of like whoosh. But you can get, there's like a, right at the end of the book, they give you, in both volumes, page by page, panel by panel, they translate every single piece of onomatopoeia that is in the book. So I mean, I didn't use it, I didn't feel like I wanted to keep flicking to the back, and especially when there's so much of it, but it tells you that there's things like, you know, glub glub, fish fish, gwoom gwoom, flash, whir, tump, whack, jab, whoosh, rip, thud, whack, dwack. So there's a lot of them, and perhaps I did miss out on some of the kind of sounds, but I like that they kept it fairly, you know, they kept it as true as they possibly could. And there's a small piece at the back of the second. As I said, I would tell you, the manga was completed, the last panel was drawn on the 28th of January 1994. So yeah, just, you know, a great edition. I like the way that they presented this as faithfully as possible, but what do I think about the actual manga itself? Being a fan of the film, I love the film. I really wanted to see the story expanded and see what else Miyazaki had in mind for this story and this world and these characters of Nausicaa, of the Valley of the Wind. Industrialized civilization has fallen. There was the 7 days of fire, you know, basically Armageddon. The world started over again, and this toxic jungle, this sea of decay, sea of corruption, spread across the world, and you have these giant mutated jungle. Humans can't live. You know, the spores, they're toxic and they will kill you. So the sea of corruption is spreading, and it's taking. She is a character who likes the insects. She connects with them, and she has a special connection to them. And she is a very a selfless person, and a great character who's always just trying to do the best thing for everyone. She's trying to be diplomatic. She is trying to be, you know, heroic at times to kind of save others, and she always puts other people in front of herself, and she values the lives of every living creature, whereas most of the characters in this story, you know, will hate the insects, will kill them any chance they get, and so kind to kind of come to some resolution. Now the story of the film is a very much, you know, it has a beginning, a middle and an ending. The film has a very definitive ending, a very satisfying ending, a conclusion that you can kind of make up in your own mind and imagine where the future of the story and Nausicaa would go. This, up to about there, is probably where the film ends. And it doesn't quite have the same ending as the film, because it doesn't have the resolution, and so it just continues, but it has some of the very dramatic events from the film, and kind of follows it pretty closely, and then it goes off on its own thing, and you have new characters introduced past, you know, I mean, obviously the artwork is phenomenal. I think that Miyazaki's drawing in this is awesome. It's so engaging and dense and deep and detailed, and then not detailed, and expressive. Just great storytelling just through the way that he draws things. So in that sense the characters are great, but also just their actions and who they are, and what they fight for, what they don't fight for, what they believe in, what they don't believe in. And also characters from the film, they get even more time, like Kushana. She is a really good character in the film, but she is an amazing character in the manga. Absolutely, like, I thought she was phenomenal, and there's more of a kind of parallel between her and Nausicaa in the manga, because you see a full journey for her, one of the leads in the manga. Also, Yupa, you know, is a great character in the film, but he's even better in the manga because you get so much more time with him. Asbel, the young boy, I felt like, you know, from the whole 1,000+ pages of this, he wasn't in it as much as I would have liked, and so his character kind of didn't really live up to much, I have to say. I liked him, but, you know, it was the other girl, Ketcha, who kind of joins his kind of journey. I liked her character more. But there's so many great characters, so many different clans and kind of you know, factions of people like the Toramikians and the Dwarves, not only because of the right to left paneling, but also just some of the action. There's a fight fairly early on in the film between Nausicaa and this kind of this guy in armor, and I really wasn't sure what was going on, or the ramifications of it, because like about a page later it's like, wow, she just killed him. I was like, really? It didn't seem like she killed him, like, at all, and I was flicking back and I still couldn't see it. So a few things I did lose. And then also when there's so many characters and so many different people and emperors, some of the geography, even though, you know, Miyazaki has included, you know, maps and things. But I have to say, if anyone wants to read this, maybe you're interested in it, you like the film, my advice would be to power through that. I got this less than a week ago, and I've literally read all 1,000+ pages in about 5 sessions, basically. I mean, it was gripping reading, and so powering through it that fast, I kind of pieced together the missing parts, you know, as I went along. And so by the time I got to the end, I can pretty much kind of remember all the beats and things like that. And so yeah, if you get lost, just keep going, and it'll start to slot into place, I think. But I do think that is a criticism that I could probably level at it, is that it is a bit confusing at times. But also you got to remember that Miyazaki was kind of doing this in installments, you know, like 8 pages here, 10 pages there, 16 pages here every month. Sometimes he wouldn't be able to deliver, and he would draw a little kind of apology cartoon to put in the magazine to say, I'm sorry, I can't, you know, I couldn't get to it this month or whatever. And again, he's telling this story over 12 years, and you can really tell where the story starts changing at times and goes in different directions. But, you know, overall, I just have to say, without spoiling anything, that it is one of the best stories I've ever read or experienced. You know, it makes the film seem like child's play. It makes the film, I've said this to a few friends, it makes the Nausicaa film feel like Star Wars if Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens had never happened. It's still a great film, and if no other sequels had been made, it would still be a great film. But, you know, there's so much more that you can get out of that universe. And that's what I feel with the manga. You get so much more out of the universe, and it's such a better story than the film. And I'm anxious to revisit the film to see if my opinion changes, and if I think of the film lesser or more. Because one thing I will say, it's all in black and white, and it does look gorgeous. But a lot of the times I was just thinking, man, I wish that I could see all of this in film form, with Miyazaki's animation and you know, Joe Hisaishi's music and all that kind of stuff. And a few times I did listen to the soundtrack from the film while reading, and that was very cool. But, you know, there's only like about 45 minutes of that, so I couldn't do it for the whole time because it would get too repetitive. But a few times I did that, and it was quite nice. But otherwise I read in silence, and that wasn't really a detractor, because the story is so engaging and so dramatic. There's so many great moments of drama and action, and just, you know, wow. You know, there's some great shockers in there, and there's quite a bit of violence in it as well. Some graphic violence I wasn't expecting towards the end, and it does feel like it matures more as you get towards the end of the story. But it has a very interesting conclusion, and I kind of felt almost an anticlimax at the conclusion, probably because it was very big and dramatic, but the whole book had been very big and dramatic, the whole story, I should say. And so it didn't feel like it was, well, it kind of did feel like the big blow off, but I think really it was more anticlimactic because I kind of wanted more out of it. You know, not that I'm saying that there should have been more in the story or more out of the characters, but I just wanted it to go on even longer. That's what I mean, basically. But all good things must come to an end, and he could have continued it on for another 10 years, another 12 years, but I like that he decided, right, it stops there, and that's that, you know, and has just left this fantastic story. And I love that he didn't really plan it all that much as well, and it just kind of evolved and was very free-flowing. And it kind of shows, and maybe that's a bad thing, that it's not quite cohesive. I will say towards the end, like, you know, in the last couple 100 pages, it kind of has this little introductory thing, like, and now we have these characters over here, and it's like, I know that's where we last left them off, but again, you got to remember that it was in monthly installments, and also he would take, you know, a couple of years of a break, and so maybe, you know, when he comes back, for the people reading this in real time at the time that they were released, perhaps they needed a refresher of sorts. But yeah, it's an amazing piece of work, just fantastic, and I guess I would probably say the best thing that I've experienced that Miyazaki has done. Is that upside down? Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, I love his films. They're amazing. They're masterpieces, but they're just, there's something to be said about this story, you know. And I would definitely recommend getting this version, because you can buy these 7 volumes separately, but I think that would cost a lot more. And this is just a really nice deluxe set, and it really feels special. So I would highly recommend it. And in fact, I'm not even going to go into spoilers. You know, there's dramatic parts in it, and there are moments that were sad and, you know, beautiful. Some haunting imagery as well that you probably wouldn't expect. And yeah, even towards the end, there were still a few bits where I didn't know what was going on in every single panel. I have to say that. But overall, it is just one of the best things I've ever read. I highly recommend it, and it is just, you know, it's definitely something where the word masterpiece is absolutely justified as a word, and not just an over-exaggeration or an indulgent phrase to kind of say this is a great film, it's a masterpiece. No, this is a true masterpiece, it really is. Unfortunately, the book that I got is a little dented around the edges and stuff, which is kind of a shame, and on the bottom as well. But I mean, it's just so classy, and just a phenomenal piece of work. And Nausicaa is just one of the best characters. I mean, she doesn't, you know, she's not this completely innocent person. She doesn't keep her hands clean throughout the entire story, and she has to wrestle with that. And she goes on such a journey, probably one of the best journeys ever. Like, it's such an epic. It reminded me of Lord of the Rings. It felt Tolkien in a way. Like, it just felt like one of those worlds that has so much thought put into it. Not perhaps as much as Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. I definitely feel like Miyazaki is a bit more looser with that kind of thing, but he puts in all the little details, you know, the names and just the weird things like the insects and the way that the Sea of Corruption, the spores and everything look, and it's just it's phenomenal. It really transports you to another world, and a fantastic post-apocalyptic tale, and very much a lot of an environmental theme, you know, and a cautionary tale to human error in terms of just like the way that wars start and how we destroy each other and things like that, and how we destroy nature as well. So there's a lot of themes in it, and very rich, deep themes that you can get into. And I was going to talk about this. This is another great book, but you know, there's not too much to say. There's about 100 pages worth of watercolors from like the covers he did for the magazines. And in fact, if you take off the dust sleeve, the front cover here has actual covers from the magazine where the manga was printed, which is really cool. And also when you see the watercolor images inside this book, you get the comment from Miyazaki on the left about this drawing, and also on the bottom you get like the exact size of the print and where it was used, you know, whether it was used on. I mean, let's take a look at this image, like a really great one. And first appeared in 1989 on the magazine that the manga was printed in. It was on a CD and cassette jacket. It was on a score cover, a desktop calendar from 1991 and 1993 calendar, a cassette index, a poster, a desk pad, a notebook for the movie, you know, so you get all this information, and then there's stuff from the film as well, and just images that he drew in, you know, conceptual stages. Just some of this stuff, you know, just gorgeous imagery. What I love about this though is how Miyazaki is so honest in his comments on the on the left hand side of the watercolors. Like, you know, he talks about his thought, you know, the thought process of writing it, and it'll either be really long or really short. And sometimes he'll just say, I don't even remember drawing this one, and that's it. Or he'll say that this one was rubbish, or he'll say that he doesn't like images where Nausicaa is posing and smiling, but people asked him to do it, so he did it, but he hated doing it, and he doesn't feel like that's the character because she wouldn't pose like that and smile. She's not a very smiley person, she's got a lot of inner turmoil going on, so he's very honest, like blunt honesty, and I really appreciate that, because it's kind of on one hand funny to read, but also you just feel like you get the absolute truth from this guy anytime he speaks about something, and whether it's something that you don't want to hear or not, you know, is a whole other thing. But yeah, there's lots of great stuff in this, and I would highly recommend, if you're a fan of the film, if you're a fan of the manga, I would definitely recommend picking this one up as well. And he talks about how sometimes he would do like these cover drawings and stuff, and he wouldn't have an idea of where the story was going completely yet, so he's saying that he doesn't like drawing these kind of cover images that don't take place within the story. They're just kind of action poses, and he doesn't like doing that. Some of these like autographed sketches he would do. It has the apology cartoons that he drew as well, when he was late on delivering the manga in the magazine. So yeah, this just collects like all the little pieces that any fan of the manga or the film could ever want, really. And then finally we have the kind of history of how the manga was serialized in the magazine through 1982 to 1994. So you get the whole timeline there. So phenomenal book, phenomenal manga. I can't wait to read it again. You know, I'll probably leave it a while, but you know, again, reading it all. Reading 12 years worth of someone's work in, you know, about 5 days, it's an interesting thing to do. It's almost like watching a film like Boyhood, which took place over 12 years and was made over a long period of time, but that's kind of meant to be digested in one sitting. This was kind of meant to be read as it happened, you know, in serial form. So I wonder if I could kind of, I don't think I'd go hardcore and try and read this over 12 years in the exact same increments that it was released, but perhaps reading just maybe like 10 or 20 pages, you know, every couple of days or something, and just really spreading it out, it might even make the story even more enjoyable. But as it is, it's just a phenomenal piece of work. I'm just trying to think of anything else I can talk about. There's just great characters I love in it. I don't want to go into too much detail because I would love people to read it and enjoy it and not know too much about it, and where the story goes and which characters come in and which, you know, which things start happening. But there's just some, you know, it almost just felt like fan fiction at times of someone who saw the film and loved it and was like, wouldn't it be great to show Nausicaa and Kushana doing this? And you get to see it in the manga and it's like, this is incredible, you know, it's brilliant, it's absolutely brilliant. There's nothing much more to say. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video tomorrow.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans and calling into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.